to keep it out of the way here while we have exposed the brain. We've already removed a flap of bone here, opened the coverings of the brain. This is the dura here, and I don't know whether that's, but here's one of these little flaps of the dura that's been cut and pulled back on stitches, and we've exposed the brain surface, and we've gotten a very good start here this morning on this youngster, and we've been now in the process of opening the arachnoid over the surface of the brain. The arachnoid is a little very thin translucent membrane within which the fluid that surrounds the brain is confined, and we want to open that membrane so that the blood vessels that are going to sprout from this artery can get into the brain. So we've Dr. Eric Jackson, our fellow, is helping me with the surgery, and what he's done already is help us open the arachnoid in a number of areas. We've started here, and you might get a feeling. Let me show you in magnification what this area looks like. Here's one of these arteries on the brain surface.
Well, that looks great, Dr. Scott. Really.
And the arachnoid open here.
But perhaps in a moment what we might do here is that we have some excellent schematics of what the operation is, so I might cheat for just a moment to the slide so folks can see.
Right, I've got it picked up in my forceps. Eric does too here, and we're continuing the opening here. Almost finished this part of the operation, Ed.
Oh, great. Well, things seem to be going very well in there. I think right now I'm going to introduce one of our guests as we head away from the OR for just a second.
In the side of the blood vessel here, and we're just tying it down. I hope you can see it there on the television. I'm going to, the suture material is this 10-0 nylon. It's about a third the size of a human hair, and it's very delicate. But we're stitching the edge of the blood vessel to the surface of the brain to keep it in contact with the brain. And so that's what's happening right now. Here's the last throw on the suture now. And now I'm going to cut the suture. The first one in place here.
I would comment a little bit that one of the big advances that Dr. Scott has done here with surgery is in the development of the pielocystangiosis surgery. Two big things that he's done, which you can see illustrated well here in the operating room right now, are opening the arachnoid, which is this thin, filmy, almost saran wrap-like layer over the surface of the brain. And previously this was not widely opened. I think one of the big advances has been by opening this, this allows our donor blood vessel to grow in without a mechanical barrier to ingrowth. We've also done a lot of research in our laboratories here at Children's, along with other institutions around the world, to show that there's a lot of growth factors, essentially fertilizer, for these blood vessels. And by removing this barrier, it allows the donor blood vessels to really grow much, much better because you're getting the fertilizer where it's needed. The second thing that Dr. Scott's done, which he's illustrating right now, as we see here in the webcast, which is a very important part of the case, is the stitching of the blood vessel to the brain, the so-called pielocystangiosis. The surface of the brain is the pia, and syn means coming together, angiosis of the blood vessel, so your fancy way of saying getting the blood vessel onto the brain. But the real advantage here is it puts what we want to grow in direct contact of where you want it to grow. And this is a very delicate part of the surgery. You can see Dr. Scott and Dr. Jackson doing just a great job of it right now. This is something I think that Dr. Scott really pioneered here at Children's and has been immensely helpful in increasing the success rate of getting really wonderful ingrowth of new blood vessels onto the surface of the brain and then supplying the blood that the brain needs to prevent future strokes. So I think this is a particularly delicate and thankfully very successful part of the surgery. We're able to see it right now on the webcast, and just is going along very, very smoothly. I think we'll be able to see a little bit more of that in a few minutes, but right now, as we have the blood vessel coming into play, I think it's an appropriate time to maybe segue over to Dr. Darren Orb.
I'm going to try to get one more. We're just cutting the suture material now on this fourth stitch. Another scissors, please, Judy. Judy is our scrub nurse today. We're monitoring the patient with EEG, and Sancerre is doing the EEG monitoring for us. So, and everything has been going smoothly with a very stable EEG out in the last the next to last suture, we hope.
It might be worth commenting on just briefly for a moment here is that in addition to the actual surgery where we can monitor visually what's going on with a microscope, as you can see right here, this very tiny suture that you're putting in to hold the blood vessel to the brain. We really have a lot of other adjuncts in the operating room, and I know Dr. McLean will talk about this a little bit more as we get to the anesthetic part of the case, but we use a lot of tools in the operating room, Dr. Scott, and I know you've been a big advocate of using the EEG, sort of brainwave monitoring during the case to help anesthesia keep things safe with our neurology colleagues. We've been able to use all the anesthetic tools that we have, and this is something where we really try to make the case as safe as possible. So it looks like things are going very well in there. You see the suture that Dr. Scott is placing. This is, again, one of several stitches that will help hold the blood vessel in contact with the brain. Dr. Scott, anything to comment on before we head over to one of our colleagues, Dr. Rivkin?
No, I think we're doing fine so far, Ed. Thanks very much.
Well, great. We'll come back in a few minutes and see how things are going. So,
blood vessel down onto the brain surface. So that the hardest part of our work is done now. And what we're starting to do is, here's the coverings of the brain. We're just going to put these back down on the brain surface, and there some blood vessels are going to sprout from the edges of this dura into the brain as this patient heals. So this is another source of blood supply. So again, I think you can see it's probably just right according to the textbook today. So we're very fortunate, I think. And I'm just cutting these dural flaps now. And while Eric Jackson is busy on the side table preparing the bone flap, and so we can put that back in, and he's putting wires on metal titanium plates on its edge so that we can fix the bone back in place very firmly for this youngster, so that he doesn't have to worry about playing sports and other activities as he gets older.
So you allow these children, Dr. Scott, and I know we've talked about this before, to essentially, when the surgery is over, they can pretty much do many things that any other kid would do once they've healed and had a chance for the incision to heal up and the blood vessel to grow in, correct?
That's correct. I mean, I have children who are doing just about everything you can think of after the surgery. I don't think we've got any professional football players, but we do have people who have had careers raising children. We have a couple of doctors in the group, which is something that's very gratifying too. So we don't stop the kids from doing anything they want to do.
And I think that's important. A lot of the parents have asked in the office, both you and I, what happens after the surgery, and I think it's important to emphasize that once kids have been treated for this and they've had the ability to grow in new blood vessels, they can go out, they get married, they have kids, they get jobs, they go to college, they do everything just like any other kid. And I think one of the big success stories here is how, with a big multidisciplinary effort, we're able to get the kids through the surgery successfully most of the times, and they do very well. And long term, we hope that these are just happy, healthy, regular kids. Yes. Part of the way we're able to get them through this is by having a very dedicated team, and one of the most important things, especially like today in the operating room, is neuroanesthesia. We talked a little bit earlier about how important it is for the operating room to be able to have a little bit to our viewers to what's going on and sort of what is happening in the operating room right now.
Well, what we've been doing here, Ed, right now is putting the bone back on. I don't know whether your audience can see the picture here, but and you can see this is the area of the bone flap that we removed. There are holes that Dr. Jackson has cut for the artery to pass in and out of the craniotomy site. So here's the artery coming in from the scalp here, and then it's going to be running underneath the bone flap across the brain where we've sutured it. It's coming back out here and going back to the scalp here. And there are these 4 little titanium plates that are holding the bone in place around the edges here to keep it good and solid, which it is. And we're going to be ready to close up now. So we're going to take off the skin and we're going to close up the incision.
So what are the layers, Dr. Scott, that you have there to close up? I know some people ask sometimes about, what actually happens under the incision. I think we have a little schematic from our artist as well that can talk briefly about some of the different layers you have to close here, because parents often ask what happens under the incision. What are the types of layers that you're closing and what's involved in the closure itself?
Well, Ed, we have just really 3 main layers to close, and may I have an Adson, please, Judy? The layer here that your viewers might be able to see right now that I'm holding with my suture is the temporalis muscle. This is a chewing muscle on the side of the head, which we've had to part to expose the skull to do the operation, and what we're going to do is suture this back in place, and then when we're finished doing that, we're going to close the deeper layer of the scalp, which is called the galea, and that'll give the skin incision strength and help it to heal well. And then finally we'll put stitches in the skin. So those are the 3 things we're going to do right now.
Scott, I appreciate that very much, and it's a good time now maybe to segue as we're closing up in the operating room.
So here we're putting the stitches in a tough tissue on its outer surface called the fascia to keep it together. And we've got about 2 more sutures to go here, and then we'll be starting on the skin.
Well, great. And when you complete that, now these sutures, these are dissolvable, are they?
They're all dissolvable, and everything on this youngster will be dissolvable, so that we don't have the child doesn't have to have any stitches taken out later on. So we even use dissolvable stitches on the skin.
Well, that's great. I think that helps a lot in terms of as Dr. McManus was mentioning and Dr. McLean, one of the key things is to make sure that the kids are comfortable after surgery. Obviously, there's always going to be a little bit of discomfort, but making sure that they are able to minimize any problems they have is very helpful and very important to the long-term outcome. I think I might chat now briefly.
Skin closure, and it's gone very smoothly with no problems. And I want to make sure we thanked all the nursing team here too, Jeannie and Judy, and Beth was here, who have made all the work we do so easy and so effortless.
Well, it looks like everything went really wonderfully in there today. You put on a picture-perfect show for us, textbook-like, just like the textbook you've written on this, and it looks wonderful.
好，谢谢。